Awesome. And we're live with another NPM Open RFC call. Today's date is July the 22nd, Wednesday, July 22nd. And I'm just going to, again, copy and paste for anybody that might have shown up late, the HackMD doc. Feel free to add yourself to the attendees list. And we'll be following all along the agenda that was posted in, I think it was issue 160, but that's copied here in the HackMD doc as well. Quick note, these calls and all communication on the RFC's repo is covered under a code of conduct. So just be mindful when others are speaking. Please raise your hand if you have any comments, and I'll call on you. And just be thoughtful with people as we discuss the contents of the RFCs. And again, just to outline sort of the desired outcomes of this call is to work closely with community and provide another channel for us to essentially discuss the work in progress and the RFCs being proposed to change and update and improve the functionality of NPM. Is there any announcements that we have? Anybody on the call that want to bring up? If not, we can dive right into the first PR. So PR 165. So this was brought up, I think, last week. Christian, you're able to join. This is the RFC for parent package, a parent in package JSON, which I think we sort of discussed a little bit, and Isaac, I think, left a few comments on. But would love if you could maybe go into a bit of detail about this. I think he actually just dropped. I'm not sure if that was on accident. We can come back to this actually if he's, there he is. Hey.
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know. I just wanted to get rid of a pop-up and then that happened.
Apologies. Yeah, so I was just saying, like, maybe you could give us a little bit of detail into what this is, and then we can discuss it a bit.
So what this is basically trying to solve a problem that we were having at work, which is basically that we have lots of single page applications which are all their own NPM packages, and they all share the same architecture, so they share a lot of dependencies. They all share the same authors. They share the same scripts. They even share the same license. We at the moment we use Learner to have a workspace feature because NPM 7 is not yet live. And when we built them in a continuous integration environment, we want to have them separate because they are like separate dependencies, and they actually also separate Git repositories. So hoisting packages like you would generally do in like a in a workspace environment is not really an option for us because we felt that would break the separation that we wanted to achieve. And also we had the Java backend guys kind of pushing us to follow their route, which is kind of using like a Maven parent POM, and to just like define all the dependencies once and then just use them in like any subsequent packages, because like you try to achieve uniformity wherever possible. And so I kind of just took an afternoon when I was home early from work, and I just kind of ripped it together. How I could feel that might work in NPM. So I am by no means saying that any of what I've written is any good. It's just meant to be really a conversation starter. And if any of you just says like, this is going into the completely wrong direction, I have a absolutely better idea, I'm absolutely going to take it.
For sure. I think ZB, you have your head up. Did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure that this couldn't be solved with the existing functionality, because I don't know if you consider that ugly or not, but you can have a package JSON somewhere else, install the dependencies listed by that package JSON, and then in your local package JSON reference them as a file colon location. That's a location pointing to a parent folder's node modules, and that either works out of the box. If you run npm install, it's gonna do all the symlinks and everything to make it work, or it might get you in trouble with some cases of node usage where node wouldn't go to a parent folder. I remember I tried multiple variants of that a while back, and while a bit annoying, it can be done for a front-end project, definitely. That's all I wanted to add. So maybe a temporary solution that we can start with.
So Christian, if you'd like to respond to that, and then I think Wes, and then Orda.
Yeah, I am definitely not aware of that. And if you could point me to like some kind of documentation of that. Let's just say I would try to take it for a spin on like the weekend or something. Not sure. I could imagine that this would allow for what we're trying to achieve. I'm definitely not certain, but I'm not ruling that out either. I would have to look into that for sure.
Yeah, I think it only solves for part of what you're speaking to, because you also had, it seemed like you had licensing and you had a whole bunch of other like props that you're trying to mimic across all these projects. Wes, if you want to.
Yeah, that was part of what I was going to say. Is the dependencies is one small facet of this problem, but I think there's a lot of other good prior art out there. Look at create the React scripts package. What we're trying to do is a hybrid that you can extend from, that has a bunch of script definitions that you want in every create React app package, right? So I think there's a lot of really good reason to have a feature to solve this type of problem. I do think we have a world that is much harder to solve it than the Java folks do. Just some of the complexities Isaac pointed out in the thread with like, where do you find the package to extend? Do we need to unpack the tarballs and do the thing before we like there's just a bunch of technical details that make this approach hard. Not to say that it's not good. And again, we have a lot of clear precedents where I think we need to come up with a solution. I think this one might be prohibitively difficult, and I do not have a good answer. I just look at the complexity here and think, wow, imagine if you download a package and it says extends, and then that one extends something, and then the other one extends something, and now you're like nested in what precedents do the license field take. Like obviously there's, you know, just the hierarchy, but then you look at, do you deeply nest things, right? Because it's just a JSON object. So like scripts, and then we got repositories, and like, you know, then we say we add like the supports. It really is, exactly. Yes, it is. It is exactly that. So anyway, that was all. It is a deeper problem, but it is a real problem. And I think we should consider, you know, maybe it is worth the complexity, because Create React App and the React Scripts package is wildly popular and is exactly this problem.
Order, did you have something to add as well?
Yeah, so the extends has, like TypeScript actually has this exact feature. That is how TypeScript can handle, you know, you reusing someone else's config. So you can use that as a reference for someone else that's doing the same thing. But of course, TypeScript, everything's already available for you locally on the file system, so it's cheap to do lookups. And on the other, like the actual root of your problem around the ideas of like isolated dependencies, as a part of workspaces in Yarn, that's actually a feature of it where you can just say, like, you can just script where each one is isolated as you go through the packages, and it would do a dependency resolve for each one in there. So that could be a feature that could get added to NPM's workspaces too.
Yeah, that's a good point, Orda. Isaac, I know you had your hand up. Apologize, you can't do that in a more official capacity. Feel free to weigh in.
I am totally fine with my unofficial hand raising. Yeah, so I think, you know, if we carve back, you know, kind of carve down the scope a little bit of this RFC, I think that we could actually get to something that that solves the use cases that that Christian and Wes both brought up. So imagine this, like, let's say your extends field in package.json has to refer to a specific package.json file. So that can be either file colon some path, or that can be HTTPS colon some URL. That gets us out of the situation where we have to like unpack a tarball and then you know, look at its package JSON, and it might have extends and whatever else. The other piece that I would add to this is to stipulate that the package JSON that goes into a packed tarball is always fully extended and resolved. So there's no package JSON extension at install time. And if we do that, then that also covers the case where you're going to have a bunch of these in node modules. So, and I think you know, maybe a way to make that even more firm and explicit is we actually add a rule on the registry to say you're not allowed to publish something if it has an extends field in the package manifest. So if we add kind of those three guardrails around it, then the implementation becomes a lot simpler. We already have two different libraries for reading package.json. One is called read package.json, and the other is called read package.json fast. The main difference is that read package.json does a lot more. It looks to see if you're in a Git folder. It infers your home page. It like checks to see if you have a server.js file, and if so, it adds a default start script. Like there's a bunch of stuff like that. So if we just kind of add the extension into read package.json, but not into read package.json fast, then we don't even have to worry about it for installs or reading the actual tree, right? Because there can never be an extension in there. And that keeps us out of kind of some of the more abusively slow performance issues. The other piece of this, in order to make that the case, we do have to munge the package.json as it's being put in the tarball. And so this does add the caveat that if you're using extends and you pack a tarball and then you change nothing about your current working directory, but the extended package JSON changed, and you pack a tarball again, then you will get different bits in the tarball, like because it refetched it and, you know, got new extension values. And so I think, I think that's an okay caveat to have, to just say, like, if you're using this feature, your builds are now only reproducible based on the current contents and whatever package JSON you're extending. So if we can do that, like, I'm actually okay with sort of carving back this RFC and then accepting it. I don't think it's something we would get in for 7.0, but it's also not a breaking change, so we could do it later in the 7 series.
I agree with that implementation. So the one thing I'd be mindful of is if there's any prior art for extends. If anybody else is already using it, if we're going to essentially make this a
like a not allowed.
Yeah, like
field. Yeah,
exactly. Like it's something that we're going to essentially exclude from the document.
Yeah, we'd have to do a little bit of research just to make sure it's safe to spell it that way. But conceptually, I think those are the things that would have to kind of be added to make this feasible.
Okay, so that's good to know. Order says it's also used in tsconfig JSON. So is there a lot of overlap in tsconfig.json with package JSON? No. Okay, so
no.
Okay.
Yeah, they're basically two completely different file formats.
Yeah, I wouldn't use that as like a hard and fast precedent. If people are using extends to mean some other thing today, then okay, we can pick there's plenty of synonyms.
So the two things that you bring up, Isaac, one, it has to be fully resolved before packing, and then the extends value would have to be like a file path. Is that right?
File path or URL.
File path or
I
URL.
would say it basically has to be a thing that we can resolve to a package JSON without having to fetch and unpack a package.
How do you feel about those caveats, Christian? Like if we were to make those amendments?
I think I'm generally on board with that. I'm trying to think about what it means to have the file on disk that you extend. However, I think you could you just put like one dependency which kind of has the JSON that you extend, and then because otherwise you couldn't version it, right?
You could use like an unpackage URL, right?
You could use an unpackage URL or a raw.github.com or raw.githubusercontent.com or whatever URL. Like there's plenty of ways to put some JSON text on the internet, right? We can certainly certainly do that a lot, but I think extend package at 1.0.0 is a little bit more hairy, right? Because it could. So Wes, here's the problem. If we allow you to pass in a package specifier, like a dependency specifier, then I would imagine as a user that I can do package at 1.x as the extend value. I would also imagine that I could do package at github:/bar.
So I was agreeing with you until that. I think that's a reasonable limit to saying you can only do registry specs, because that's the easy one to know, right? That's the immutable one. That's right? That has a bunch of controls around it, which give us predictability and safety that something like a get URL doesn't. I guess I understand where you're coming from, but I'm just like, I'm working on getting rid of all Git-based dependency declarations anyway in everything that I touch. So like, to me, that's just like delete it from NPM and I'm happy. So if we add new features that don't support it, I'm also happy. But maybe I'm alone in that.
I now work for a company with a pretty big vested interest in people using Git for a lot of things. So I feel like just removing it entirely is probably not a great idea. But no, it's a little tongue in cheek. I think I'm kind of with you. Like it just feels like an inelegant restriction to say it can be a package specifier, but only this kind of package specifier. And I want to avoid having Pacoche as a dependency of read package JSON, right? Like fetching a URL is something I can do inline really easily, and it's much more, the question is like, should it be a reference to a package or should it be a reference to a file? And I think that's kind of the discrepancy here.
So if you have it, so say you just started from a place where you say, I have a package already, so the feature doesn't exist, right? And people are hacking it together on their own. And they've got a package that is like already published and it's like their root thing. And they then want to now make a new package that utilizes this extending feature. I'm thinking of the React create scripts example, right? Like if create scripts wanted to convert users to this feature, they already have the create scripts package. Now they would have to have their users find the Git repo, find the, again, I don't know if it would be a tag. Like they'd be introducing a bunch of complexity onto their users to say, well, I know you normally just say npm install React scripts, but now you're going to say, find the Git repo, grab whatever you feel comfortable with as a specifier that won't break your build, right? Because like master isn't safe. Maybe create React scripts produces tagged builds, but then they probably only do the standard v1.0.1. They don't necessarily have v1.0, right? Which is probably what people, or v1.x, I guess, right? Which is saying, I actually do want the newest version of create React scripts at any given time. And it pushes all of that complexity into the Git repo or some other file hosting setup.
The consumer.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas if we just support package specifiers, that is really easy for the consumer to understand, because instead of saying npm install, we could give them a command npm extend at, or create React scripts. And then it would just do, a standard caret, 1.0. Whatever the current, latest is,
Right.
Which is like very predictable behavior for an end consumer.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're kind of, the other thing that, and again, I don't know if this is a feature or a bug of which approach, but I think that the other thing that approach would cut off is saying, like if I had I wouldn't be able to do extends ... parent.json, right? Which I could imagine being pretty useful in a lot of monorepo setups, where I have one kind of parent package.json, and that's the thing that I want all my child packages to extend. And it says it has to be a published package, right? Published meaning either, or it has to be a package. It can be either published or from a file URL. So,
I think there's some details to work out here, and just to be mindful of time, like we're almost at the half hour here, so I know there's a few other.
Should probably move on.
Yeah. But yeah, I appreciate you bringing this, Christian, to us. Like I think we can work out some details in async in the comments. And feel free to top up here. I see your hands up.
Isaac, could you just give me the links to the two repos that you mentioned, the two packages? One was, I think, read packages, right?
Read package JSON. Yeah, I will.
Because I would then take a look at it and try to incorporate that into, or my thoughts on that in the RFC if possible, because that would help me to gain a deeper understanding of what you're talking about. But I'm definitely on board that you're right. It shouldn't only be published packages, because otherwise we are ruling everyone out who's just using monorepos on disk, which is also not good. Thank you very much.
For sure. Thanks for adding this. So yeah, so if we can, feel free to, again, top up and add comments to the RFC itself. It sounds like we'll be discussing it again probably next week. Roy, number one, issue 160, the poll that you've had in place for workspaces. Did you want to give a quick update on the results of that poll and or any discussion that has been had?
Sure. Yeah, maybe it's time to close it. I don't know. Might be good enough of a feedback. But yeah, it seems to me that the popular opinion seems to prefer configs, right? It was like something like -- workspace or -w for short. So that was the leading option in there in the poll.
Yeah,
so,
that's I fully come around to that as well. I like that approach better. It also has the nice effect of leaving the command name open for doing things, which is kind of more like conceptually in line with how we use most top level commands.
Yeah, sure. So I think it's fine to close the issue, and let's just bring that extra piece of information to the RFC itself.
Sounds good. It's being closed. And if you want to, add the extra notes there, that'd be great. Cool. Moving on. So PR 150, RFC, I'm not to add file pack dependency protocol. I'm not sure if we have David on the call, and I'm not sure if there's been Isaac, you were the last to discuss sort of like.
Yeah, I don't know of any updates since we discussed it last time, and I put the notes in the RFC, so okay. we can let that one stay on the back burner for a bit.
Okay. Moving on then to overrides, 129, RFC 129. If you want to give a quick update there, Isaac, if we're just landing this.
Yeah, so I think the RFC as it currently stands is probably just what we're going to stick with. The only last sticking point was what we used as kind of the key to represent the current package version within the override tree, and we're sticking with dot. So
yep, sounds good.
Is what it is.
Okay. So can we expect, can you merge that, update I guess the file numbers gonna have to be updated.
Yep.
Awesome. So moving on again, so RFC 126, added types information. Order, I think you've updated the RFC itself.
Yep, RFC has been updated from our last feedback, so all fresh text. I've got a corresponding PR to read JSON package that takes into account every single type of way in which you could define your index in a package, including the new node.js exports. So the doc that we just talked about, that's supported in there too. Realistically, I think it just needs Isaac to take some time to give it a look over and see what he thinks.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, and I think if we can, we'll queue this up to, I guess, get ratified then next week, is give everybody a chance to look at them. But yeah, I appreciate you doing the work to also get PR against the repackaged JSON. That's great. Awesome. Okay, so moving on, RC 117. Roy, did you want to give a quick update to the workspaces PR? Or
sure. Yeah. The update is quite quick. There are no updates from my side, but maybe someone wants to add something. But I think from what we discussed last time, we probably want to leave this one open for a bit more time. Maybe take it out of the agenda for next meeting. But yeah, if anyone has anything to comment on it, now might be a good time.
Okay, I'll take out for now, and I'll have to do that to the issue as well. I'll just remove the labels for those two. Okay, moving on then, PR 114, expand the list of ignored files. So I think based on the time, sort of discussion we had last week, where I think it sounded like there was a couple takeaways for almost like a separate RFC for similar prompts, similar to like what you did with the publish prompt.
Yeah, maybe not necessarily. Yeah, maybe like building on top of that one, right? Having this interface to display warnings rather than just like blocking the files like this list of ignore files currently.
Yeah, so do we want to not move forward with this essentially? Like expanding the list? It's almost, it can be controversial. I don't know. Like,
yeah, I know. I know from last time we had Tierney that shared that list, right? We had some feedback from people say, oh yeah, a bunch of these items like are very disruptive, which is kind of expected, right? So yeah, we definitely need to be very careful if we're going to expand that list. Should be ready for, like we listed last time, I think we brought this up already, really things that can be harmful, but otherwise probably better to not extend it too much and have that warning list instead.
yeah, it's just hard to like back into this, right? Because we're going to start removing files that previously were allowed, right? So it's how do you apply this retroactively? And you probably don't.
Yeah, probably don't. Yeah, I don't.
So, okay. So like for me personally, I think that we could take the list that you're trying to expand and instead bring that over to a new RFC about having like a net new like warning prompt before publish that we've detected these files. Do you really want to like, you know, I think then we could expand it even larger to it than what we have today, right? Like we could be more aggressive about that list that we're going to warn for. So might be best to maybe close this out. I don't know if it makes sense to try to move forward with this. I'm not sure how other people feel, or if you feel strongly that we should expand the list as it is today. I know there hasn't been any movement because it is a little bit.
But yeah, same thing. Maybe we can leave it open for a little more while, like a little while, and then put it back on the agenda again sometime.
Okay, so you want to remove it from the agenda?
Yeah, let's start by removing it from the agenda, give it a little bit more time, and then we can revisit in the future and close it if there is not really any activity on it.
I agree with that. Okay, moving on then to PR 96, add publish confirmation prompt. I think this is already being ratified, no?
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, this one should be ratified already. Yeah, I think it's just the technicality of merging it. But yeah, should definitely not be in the agenda. I can remove it.
Okay, I just removed it as well. So there you go.
Cool. Thank you.
Yep. So PR, moving on then. Fast and furious here. PR 18 NPM audit resolve. I think ZB, you've joined specifically. You've updated this actually just recently too. If you want to quickly speak to that.
Yeah. So as we discussed on one of the previous meetings, a few meetings ago, I now rewrote the whole thing to only be limited to an RFC for introducing support for the audit resolve file, which stores decisions about what the audit should ignore and for how long or until what date, and some minor other functionality. So this now lists some context on what this is for, how this would work, and explains support for the audit resolve file, the library that provides support for reading it, upgrading it, detecting versions, etc. already exists. I need to work a bit on the API. So I would appreciate some collaboration there. Like maybe I'm going to come up with, so I have an idea for a new API that would be much easier to embed. And I'm going to show this to someone. And the question is who that someone or those people would be. So that's one thing I would like to know, who's interested in being involved in potentially embedding that code into NPM. And then somewhere near the bottom, there's a bit where I link to a JSON. Where did it go? Yeah, there's a link to JSON schema. That's in a JS file for the version 1, because there's also a version 0, because as I mentioned before, I already made breaking changes because the initial spec for the audit resolve file was not good enough. And after talking to a few people on this RFC when it was first posted, I got that changed. So yeah.
I think Wes had a quick question in chat. Do you have an updated link? It seems like the one that he was referenced is broken to the, I think the schema.
Wait a second, link to the
Yeah,
schema.
there was a comment in here that had a link to the schema, but that seems to be broken.
No, that's the schema is in the RFC itself now in the markdown file line 139. I'm gonna link to both.
Ah, yeah. Thank you. Okay, I didn't see that. It's hard to read in a diff.
Yeah. At least pre-tier didn't change everything up.
Thanks for linking that. I think there's an opportunity to also bring like this to the package maintenance working group. I'm sure Wes would probably also agree with that. I know because you've already done previous work with on this. In terms of anybody on NPM side to sit down and work on bring this in, realistically there probably won't be any time in the next month-ish to do that. But yeah, like in terms of getting some more movement on this, if there was an interest from you to maybe even grant that tool that you've been working on back to the PKG.js org, that might be a way to get more collaborators on it, based on the fact that there's some folks that actually have time in that working group right now associated with some of the tooling that's being created there. And maybe Wes can speak to that a bit in terms of just active development work that's going on.
Yeah,
there.
if you're looking for collaborators, we've had pretty good success so far with the tools we've been putting in that group. We've sort of got a umbrella maintenance, umbrella charter, which is covered under the node org. So you get like a bunch of nice things, which so far has been proven pretty effective at getting folks onboarded to contributing. At least from other companies have a lot, not to say the name, so I'm not going to do it, but have been working on getting their folks internally who are interested in contributing to meaningful open source work to onboard onto that group. So that would be definitely a good opportunity if you're looking for feedback from people with experience maintaining packages and working in the ecosystem, and then also just to get some other folks like contributing. So I posted a link to the group. You can feel free to open, or is there already an issue?
I
Cool.
did, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I've just added the label so it'll get added to the next agenda. Sorry about that. I didn't know that you'd already created an issue there, CP. So, but yeah, maybe we can, has anybody had a chance to actually look at this update on our team? No. I think that the updated schema is probably the thing that we'd love to dig in a bit more. So if you're okay with us leaving this on the agenda for next week, it'll give
Sure.
everybody some time to look it over.
Sure. Yeah, there's no rush. This is older than my daughter.
It's one of the oldest RFCs that we've had in the works. So I would love if it eventually land, or some sort of version of it lands. We land support in.
Okay, so I'm definitely up for donating the core package that I planned to finish off for embedding into an org. So if anyone could share some sort of guidance how to do that, I should be able to follow through this summer and finish off the API as the first draft of what I would see this do, and then get people to give it a try.
Awesome. Appreciate the work and also updating this. So we'll keep you on the agenda for next week for sure.
Yeah. And at the same time, I think the more I look into this after rewriting the RFC, I think we're not ready to have a single tool for generating the file. And I think there's room for userland innovation there. And I would see multiple tools use that file for their purposes. Maybe not the tools the size of like SNCC, if I'm allowed to say that, but some more local tools, more specialized tools, or just alternatives to this NPM audit resolver package that I built, so that we could experiment with different ways of populating the file.
Eventually, we're probably going to want to have a npm audit fix interactive, which would then, I imagine, just create the file and npm audit would automatically do the right thing with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I mean, as you're saying, like there could be a tool created before that time, or like other tools could generate it, right? Like automatically for you. So cool. So quickly moving on, we have a few two last RFCs here. RFC 185, adding the ability to skip script hooks, which was a fun bug and or feature that Lucas has found. Would you like to tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, this is a small user experience oddity I ran into last week. So I was looking for a way to skip a pre-test script because it does some linting and was just getting in my way. And I vaguely remembered, oh, there is this -- ignore scripts option, and just tried it and like ran npm tests ignore scripts. And to my surprise, it did nothing. So there's two weird things here. Right? Like, so when you run anything, I guess that's not npm install with the ignore scripts flag, it just does nothing at all. And there is no way to skip pre or post scripts for any given script today.
So yeah, I commented on this PR. I think this is great. When I poked at it in npm 7, I found actually there is a change that we hadn't noticed in npm 7, where if you have -- ignore scripts and you run npm test, it will just do it anyway, along with the pre and post. And because of the rewrite of npm lifecycle to npm CLI/run script, it's a little bit less opinionated about configs and ignore script and that stuff. So it's a really easy patch to implement pretty much exactly the way that Lucas is suggesting. I am very thumbs up about it. I think, I can fill in the rest of the kind of missing sections in the RFC and just land it ASAP unless somebody has objections to it.
Yeah, that would be nice. I don't really have any expertise to add for implementation details or anything like that.
For sure. Wes, did you have something you want to add?
Yeah, I think while this is an awesome thing and I don't want to blow the scope out, but I think that there's some space for getting even more fine-grained. I think there are often times where, so just recently, where a post install script, well, actually, this is a common thing. Let's just talk about core.js. There we go. Exactly. I want to say never, ever, ever run core.js's post install script again on my machine. And I don't want to say don't run all post installs. I only want to say don't run core.js's post install. I think if we had some more fine-grained ability there to set some config values that really, nailed in on exactly which scripts you do want to ignore, would be highly valuable. Again, don't want to blow up maybe that's a separate RFC, but it seems like if we're going to make changes to that behavior, we should probably go the extra mile, because that's a big security hole for a lot of folks. And if you find something that you want to ignore today, you have no option other than ripping the entire dependency out. So this would be a little bit more of a nuanced approach.
Eventually overrides, but yeah, I know what you're saying. I think it is probably a separate RFC, just to be mindful of that. But ZB, you have your hand up, and then Isaac. If
there's a userland tool that wraps npm install, where you can set it up to ignore specific, or the other way, to ignore all the post install scripts and allow specific ones.
Go ahead, Isaac.
So is the problem that core.js's post install script is noisy and annoying, and you have 15 copies of it in your tree, so it prints 15 times?
That's one of the problems. I mean, I think there's a greater problem, but I don't want to necessarily talk about some of the security implications that I know of right now on the public call. If you want to, they can do anything. So I'm just saying, I have currently a post install which is causing unfortunate things to happen that I am working on resolving. If I would have been able to just tell everybody, hey, just add this line to your npm config and we're good to go, and it would just stop doing that, I would have been able to roll that out to my entire company in 30 minutes. And what I have now is a very, very different problem.
So that is a different RFC. The implementation is significantly more, it's still pretty easy, but it's significantly more than the one that we're currently contemplating, which is like just wrapping 2 lines in an if block. The UX around that too, we should chat about like how to best do that, so that you basically have either like a ignore script allow list or an ignore script block list or something like that. So yeah, let's get that other RFC. That's a great idea, and I think we should do it.
Yeah. So Christian, you're last up, and then hopefully we can get to the last RFC here.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, one package that came to mind for me was node.js, because node.js just does a lot of things when you install it. And like, I don't know, I've heard a lot of security people tell me they don't like it. So I'm definitely on board with seeing the use of that.
For sure. In terms of this specifically, I think though we can probably ratify this RFC. So basically fix and standardize the way that ignore scripts works is what this is essentially.
Right. So still, yeah, npm test ignore script -- ignore script should still run your tests. It is essentially it, and it's just those 4 commands: the test, start, stop, and restart that that have something to do with that. So if you pass ignore scripts to that, it should just ignore the pre and post, not the main script.
Yeah, I think it's technically a bug that has now become a feature, which is now we'll now have an RFC for. So I appreciate you digging in there, Lucas. That's great. So I think we can ratify this then.
Yep.
I'm not sure who wants to take that through.
I will finish it up and land it today.
Okay, appreciate that. Okay, moving on to the last RFC with a bit of time here. Apologize, Tierney. This didn't get picked up, but 182 npm adding npm audit licenses. Would you like to explain this a bit?
Yeah, so this is just basically a proposal to add checking for licenses and license tooling into NPM itself. So this is more like less of a day-to-day developer use case and more of a team use case where company wants to, you know, automatically allow certain licenses, no problem, and block other licenses from being used in their projects. So, you know, an obvious example that would generally, I've never seen someone block MIT, but MIT is one that people would allow. And then something like unlicensed or WTFPL or beer license or beerware, something like that. I've seen people be like, eh. So this is just kind of trying to push this into the project, and kind of have a path to visibility, because like, yeah, you can kind of get this information for your top level dependencies pretty easily, but it's less it's less ideal than being able to get like kind of a full report. So this proposes one, a command npm audit licenses. This was based on feedback that I collected from Twitter. Like I just asked folks what they would want to see, and this was the command that made the most sense. I'm open to changes. Not really opinionated there. It proposes properties in package.json and or audit.json, if that's what that ends up being called from the other RFC. And then it kind of proposes the structure of that, so that currently, you know, I propose a structure. Jordan Harband has been discussing while we've been in this meeting about that. Around like licensee, I think is the name of how you would say that name of the module, but that being a more ideal structure, which I'm fine with. I don't care. I'm unopinionated on that. I am more just interested in seeing tooling around this land and having kind of my minimum set of features in there. And that feature set is more complicated and more complex. And then, yeah, so that's kind of the structure that I proposed. And then there's something else in here. There's another top level thing. Basically being able to triage them. So triage this, whether it's on disk or if you're doing it online, and then kind of having the possibility to ignore or like block licenses or block modules from being installed if they have a certain license, which would obviously create issues. And that's kind of intentional. But yeah, it's like you need to go fix this before you can actually use this, which could mean changing a dependency or something like that. But I don't think that's really in the domain of what NPM should manage, or that's not kind of NPM's fault if you need to change a module to something different. And that's a whole thing that you can't really triage as a CLI. So that's basically what the proposal is.
Sure.
So I would say
Isaac and then Wes. Yeah, go ahead.
If I mean, I have some like very minor things that I can you know nitpick with the in the PR just fine, but I think my only complaint or suggestion or thought about this is like, why not just make npm audit do that? Like, I guess the difference would be npm audit licenses should print out the list, which is pretty trivial to do in Arborist once we have the tree. And the next step then is like, if you have this like licensee style list of allowed and blocked licenses, then audit should just say, yeah, this version of this package is a problem.
Yeah, so I agree.
Just do the same kind of tree resolution, you know, attempts to fix it or resolve it or whatever. Although usually if you have a license on a package, licenses change very rarely. So
yeah,
it's likely it's like affects all versions of a package anyway.
Right. So the thing there, I don't disagree that this should be also a part of audit itself. I think, and this might be just how I approach thinking about how npm commands should work, and this, I could be totally wrong in this. But like, you know, having that as a distinct set of functionality, kind of like npm install versus npm something else like config, like having that be as a subcommand of audit, in addition to running like at the root of audit itself. Like if I just want to run this distinct set of functionality versus running everything audit does, so like including different vulnerability checks and stuff like that, I am completely unopposed to it being a part of audit in addition. But I think it would be nice to have that additional functionality, like as a command itself, you know, isolated command. If that makes sense.
The advantage of having it as part of audit itself, implementation wise, is then we get this, we sort of for free get the benefit of, I run npm install, somebody added a dependency that has a license I don't like, and it will print out and say, hey, this thing is a problem, like you need to run npm audit to see it.
Yeah, I am unopinionated on that, and potentially, Christian suggested it's a flag or something. I guess the thing I'm thinking of there is just I would like to be able to run this functionality independent of audit, but I am totally fine with it just being part of audit itself. Happy to change this, however, would appease that kind of proposal.
So I'll give Wes the floor here, and just to be mindful, we only have about a minute before time. So.
I'll be really quick. I think this and audit are great together. I think that one missing thing right now is a better control of level. So when you have and it's the same thing with security vulnerability. If there's nothing you can do to fix the problem, you shouldn't be getting an error on it. Right, you should be getting like a warning or something like that. And I think audit and the way this is written right now don't really have that taken care of it. You can just ignore it.
I disagree.
Really?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Well, if you knew about ignoring, that's fine. Yeah, I agree. Then. All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Right. See, ignoring is heavy-handed, right? Ignoring is saying, I don't think this is a problem, but what I might be saying is I recognize this is a problem. I want everybody to remember that at some point we should probably go ahead and do this. It's the same kind of thing with the audit resolve where it says, do it for this period of time, but then warn me again in the future. Because with a license, I mean, if it's 7 levels deep, it's going to take you a year to try to go and convince all 7 levels to go change their license. Change the license and then depend on the new version, right? Like pushing that through is going to take a really long time, but you're not saying it's all right, I want to ignore it permanently. Right. So anyway, I just want to make, point out, and current audit, not with the audit resolver stuff, has the same problems. I might want to just make sure that we don't introduce a ton more noise like we have today with audit, where somebody runs audit and it says, you have 48,000 audit warnings or audit things. And it's like, well, screw it, I'm done. I'm not running that command anymore.
So two things that are different, I think, about this is like, it is opt-in, right? Nobody opts in to being warned about minimist's like critical failure of letting me own my own machine by polluting the proto. It's like there are some cases where it's like something is a really big problem if you use it in this particular way, but the way most people use it, it's not a problem. And that becomes, I pick on Minimist and Yargs and McDerp because like this is so close to home for me, but that's challenging because if it's a security vulnerability, you kind of do need to tell everybody. If it's a license issue, like that really should be just a thing where you opt in, right? And so I think the hazard there is much lower than it is with security vulnerabilities. That being said, because you have to opt into caring about this particular type of license, there's a good chance it will just never be changed, right? Like if I don't want to use GPL and somebody's published something as GPL, like the answer is I use a different thing, not go convince this person to change their ideology about software licensing. So ultimately, I think the hazard is a little bit lower because of the opt-in. And the second thing I wanted to mention was that the audit printing a million warnings because you have 1 or 2 things in your tree that are dependent upon heavily has pretty much been pretty much been addressed in npm 7 with the refactoring of kind of the audit output. It is orders of magnitude more kind of terse and understandable now.
So just to be mindful, we're over time now. I know that this was created last week, so hopefully folks will get some time between now and our next call. We'll keep you on the agenda and circle back on this for sure. Sounds like there's a few things we'd like to change about the details of how this would get implemented, but sounds like there's generally some level of consensus that we want something like this. So I appreciate you creating the RFC, Tierney. It's great. And I know you've put a lot of work into some tooling around this already in the past. So yeah, hopefully we can work on something together. So with that, appreciate everybody coming to another Open RFC call. We'll be doing this again, same time, same place next week. So feel free to keep up comms between now and then on the discussions themselves. And I'll see you next week. Ciao.
Bye.